There is nothing more fun than a read-along, make-along combo. Hello, my name is Emily Crow from The Cozy Crow, and welcome to my YouTube channel where I like to talk about all things fiber arts and reading, two cozy hobbies that I have. Today, I wanted to do another Anita Reads type of video where I read through a book that's in the fiber arts realm, the fiber arts community, and interact with you guys on my Discord, on Instagram, share my experience reading that book and who I would recommend it to. If you haven't seen my last video in this series, I read A Stash of One's Own, an anthology edited and compiled by Clara Parks, who is a well-known knitter and author. Today, I wanted to start looking at The Sock Project by Summer Lee, which is a brand new book that came out in February, and the first printing of this book has actually sold out almost everywhere, and so they're doing a second printing. So if you have not gotten this book yet, you can pre-order the second printing, or you can look in bookstores. It should be coming within a couple weeks from when I'm filming today, so it might even be out by the time this video comes out. But this book is a little bit different than the last book I read, which was a nonfiction about yarn stash. This is still like a nonfiction book, but it's more of a pattern and tip book about knitting socks. In this book, there are 25 patterns that Summer has written, as well as some instructions and tips and tricks about different sock techniques that she's learned. If you are not familiar with Summer Lee, she is the designer behind Summer Lee Knits. She has so many sock patterns, like, ta-da! So many. And I've knit a few of her patterns, not as many as I have in my library. There are more that I definitely hope to make, but some of my favorite patterns are from her. She is really fun. She does a lot of variety with, hello Alfred, she does a lot of variety with color and texture, and while some sock designers are very much like color work focused or lace focused, she has some sock designs in like every category of sock knitting. If you have any interest in knitting socks, she's got a pattern that would suit you. From beginner, she's got some free patterns, to some more complicated patterns that have some interesting details. So if you're interested in joining along as I read through this book and future books for this series, make sure to go to the Discord link down below where there are different channels and threads that you can discuss in to talk about different aspects of this book. I've already set up the category and channels for this book, and basically what I want to talk about is any tips or tricks that Summer gives, since she has knit so many socks of a huge variety of designs. She has a lot of tips and tricks, I'm sure, that will be really helpful for new and more experienced knitters in here. I also have a section in my Discord where we're going to talk about patterns that we love, either from this book that we're hoping to make or patterns from her collections in the past, because she has a lot of designs in her backlist, if you will. And I think it would be really fun to make a pair of socks from a pattern in this book for this like read along, make along type of thing. But I also really encourage people who want to participate to just make a Summer Lee sock pattern, and she has a few that are free, which is really great. So we're gonna look through this, and I'm gonna start to like do tabs, not like I did last time. I don't think there'll be as much like thought-provoking discussion type topics, but I wanna keep track of any like tips and tricks I notice or anything that is really like significant that makes this book written by Summer different than other sock pattern books out there. So I'm going to keep track of that. I'm also going to look through and see which patterns are intriguing to me and that I might be interested in making. Ooh. I like these socks, the Surf Wax socks. All right, so I've taken a little bit of time to look through this book, and I read through the first few pages that are just mostly talking and introduction, and then it looks like there's some writing and instructions to do with most of these patterns, which is really cool. It's not just like a bare bones pattern that if you're really trying to read through and understand the process, if it's something new to you, or if you want to pick up on some tips, you can read through the whole pattern, get those tips, and then, you know, start from the beginning, actually following the pattern itself, which is written as you would expect it to be written. Even just like glancing through, there are a lot of children's sizes, like toddler and small child, up to like extra large adult. I don't know if every sock pattern does that, but there are definitely quite a few patterns in here that are pretty size inclusive when it comes to socks. I'll have to look through to get a closer look. I am using my book darts, which is one of my favorite ways to mark things in a book. I don't know how well you can see, but I've marked a few patterns that I like. You can kind of see they're more low profile because they don't stick out. And they also have like a little point on one side, so you can see what exactly I'm trying to indicate rather than like a square tab. There's like a little pointy bit. I really like these. I just got them off of Amazon. This is my second tin that I've used. I really like using them in pattern books because then I can keep track of specific patterns that are intriguing to me, so I can find them a little bit easier and get back to them. So let's talk about some patterns that have stood out to me. I have more to read. I have only read through the first little intro, like I said. I plan to read through all of these tips and tricks and kind of share anything that I feel like sharing in this video. I'm not going to share everything, but anything interesting that maybe I already do, or how helpful I feel like all of this writing is for someone who's newer, for someone who's an adventurous beginner, for someone who's like a more experienced sock knitter. I would put myself in the more experienced sock knitter category. I've knit dozens of socks, though a lot of my socks have very similar features because I found some features don't fit me as well or don't suit me as well, but I haven't explored a ton of like different types of heels, for example. I've only done a few different types of heels and there's a lot more out there. I'll share with you my experience as I kind of read through this slowly, but I'll first share with you what patterns caught my eye so that maybe we can look for some yarn and wind up and cast on a sock, because I would love to finish the pair of socks for this read along, make along while I'm reading this book and kind of share it on my Instagram and my Discord. Like I said, I have some experience knitting socks, so I kind of skipped past all of the like basic socks, but if you're looking for a basic vanilla sock, if you're looking for a basic stripy sock, a basic rib sock, those patterns are all in here too. So this could be a really good option for someone who's pretty new at knitting socks and wants a compendium of a variety of socks. Okay, so I showed this one. This is the Surf Wax socks. I really like that texture. It looks fun. And I like these socks in white, though I don't know if I could ever get away with wearing only white socks. Summer knits a lot of socks in tonals and solid colors, which is not as much what I enjoy. I really like variegated and speckled yarns more, though I don't mind a tonal or anything, but I just have less tonals and solids in my stash compared to Summer's sock yarn stash. This pattern is really cute. The Trompe le Monde socks. Such a fun texture, but I just don't know what I would use because I really don't have solids in my stash. So I don't know if any of them would be calling to me. I did some mosaic knitting not too long ago where I used a yarn that I really liked, but I had some speckles in a very dark color compared to the base color, and it did not look good. The speckles were detracting too much from the pattern, so I feel like I could not even get away with using like a variegated or speckled for a pattern like this. It would really need to be a solid or tonal. These ones are really pretty. I really like the Soma socks. There's a nice little texture, like a twisted detail that's like a pseudo cable and some other texture throughout the socks. So that could be really good for like a variegated yarn, I think. She used tweed in this, which I like tweed, but tweed yarn tends to have more tweed than I like in my tweed. I also don't like tweed that's like hanging off of the yarn, that's like not integrated fully into the yarn, and so I will pick off those pieces of tweed. All right, and this sock, for some reason, I like really want to make a sock like this because I haven't really done it, even though it's pretty basic. It's a classic flea stitch sock. It's just a fun little colorwork motif, and I know a lot of socks have this flea stitch as like a background color work with some other color work that's more intricate included in the sock. So I made a pair of socks for my husband, the Foxes Day Out socks by Charlotte Stone, I think. I'll pop a picture up. And those I think use a flea stitch as like a background color work motif. compared to the more intricate design that was also included in the pattern. But I haven't made any for myself with this like light stitch, flea stitch pattern. And so that would be really fun to play around with that. I'm not sure if I would want to integrate any other design elements in it, maybe some fun stripes or something. I don't know, but that would be fun to do. The scrimshaw socks, I love the like porcelain Delft blue type of vibe that I'm getting from those. And then the last pattern that caught my eye in this book that I would maybe want to make now is these Scandyland socks, which is so fun. And I really like this like snowflakey type design. I think it's originally historically a Palestinian design, but I can't remember the name of it. So I'll pop it up if I can find it online. But I have heard a little bit about this design and how it originated more from like Palestinian art, and so that would be really cool to make that. I just don't know how much I want to do color work right now. I'm not really in the mood to do color work, honestly, so I think maybe something textured would be better. But let's go take a look at my stash and see what yarns are calling to me and what yarns I maybe want to cast on soon, and if any of them, if they don't have a pattern in mind, would be a good fit for something in this book. Okay, honestly, not that many sock yarns are calling to me at the moment, and a lot of them that are intriguing me might not be a good fit for these types of patterns. Like, I've got a lot of self-striping yarn. I don't think these would be a good fit for like any of the patterns in the book unless you were doing like a vanilla sock, which I didn't really want to do from her book. I wanted to do something that was a little bit more different because I have my own vanilla sock recipe that I like to do. So I have a couple socks and sock sets. Okay, for some reason, this yarn, it's Ultimate Sock Base from Malabrigo. The color is called Gloria, and it's just like amazing. It's so colorful and pastel-y, and these like black speckles all over. This just seems really fun, but I feel like this needs to be a hat or a vanilla sock or something like that. I also pulled out this yarn, which is like a really subtle gray, blue, white type of variegated, which could still work, I feel like, for some textured socks. This is Snow Day by Dying Wishes Yarn Co., and this was from their New Year's Eve countdown box that I got. But I'm kind of envisioning this to be more for like a cabled pair of socks. There were a few cabled patterns for sure, but there was only one, I think, that I showed you that had like a twisted stitch even. And I think I want to make a pair of Carly Perrins or Northwoods Knit Co. They had a storm season sock collection that I tested a pattern for, and there was another cabled sock in that collection that I really liked. So I think I might do that for this because that's kind of the connection that my brain is drawing. So I feel like these would be a really good fit for that sock pattern that was catching my eye from another designer. So I'm going to set these aside for a different sock pattern. And then I've got some sock sets. I've got 3 here. This one is looking a little rough. It's been through some stuff. This is from 316 Dye Studio. This color is called Warm Winter Day, which is cute. I love that, nice and cozy. It was like 60 degrees just a few days ago, and it snowed yesterday and overnight, and it's just a little bit gloomy. So this might be a fun like vibe to work on. It's got all sorts of like watercolory variegated pastels, so I think that might be really good for a textured sock. I've got this, which is basically like tonals. This is from Kimber's Cozy Creations, and this is the honeycomb sock set from a club that they did last year. I don't know what the minis are called, but these are some really fun, nice tonals, good for spring. The pattern that I feel like this yarn could be good for is the, what's it called? The Surf Wax socks. I'll pop a picture up. I feel like this could be really good for that, but I don't know if I would like how these colors look in that sock. I don't know what that yarn needs to become, but I feel like it's not the Surf Wax socks. I've also got this, which is more of a tonally variegated, and it's got 2 tonals that go with it. This is Treehouse Knits in First Flurries sock set. Love of Love, nice and dark and moody. I don't know. What pattern would go good with this? Those could be good Surf Wax socks, I feel like. I'm feeling it because I like this color combo better. Not Trompe Le Monde because I need more of 2 colors. The Soma socks, but how would I use both of those minis? I could do the fleece stitch socks actually. Maybe with this higher contrast. I feel like the gray might not be dark enough to stand out. That's a thought. And I'm not really in the mood for color work, though the fleece stitch socks are color work. I don't know. I think I'm going to ask on Instagram and put a couple of these yarns with a picture of the pattern I might make and kind of ask the peanut gallery. I think I'll also post on my Discord and see if anyone has any thoughts. I already was like, I think I might do this for the Soma socks, but this one is intriguing me for maybe the Surf Wax socks. And I don't know if I can get through 2 pairs of socks for this make along, but we'll see what people are leaning towards. Okay. Sorry, my hair is not behaving itself. I just posted on Instagram and I posted in my Discord too about which option I should do. Like, I was really leaning towards this one when I've been like thinking about it before pulling things out of my stash. But for some reason, the Surf Wax socks and this combo are really calling to me. So we'll see which I end up doing. Though this skein is looking a little worse for wear right now. It came apart. I rewound it up and it did not look as good. So I will maybe have to wind that one up too and use it for a different project. Maybe the Season Socks by Summerlee might be a fun pattern I've always wanted to try. How many socks can I finish in the course of this video? Let me know down below what you think. All right, it is another day recovered from working yesterday, and I had a chance to look at my poll on which pattern I should do. I know which one I was leaning towards that was kind of pulling at my heart, but I wanted to see what my Instagram followers would think, and I also put it on my Discord to see what everyone else participating in the read along make along would think as well. And while for a long time the Surf Wax socks were ahead by a lot, the Soma socks were starting to catch up, but the Surf Wax socks won, which is going to use this purple sock set, which is somewhere in my room. So I'm going to wind this up and maybe I'll cast on today. I feel like I've got a lot to do. I've got a lot of filming to do. We're getting ready for a trip. I got to go to the store, like all sorts of things. So we'll see like if I can cast on earlier today or if I'll have to cast on maybe tonight while I'm in bed, kind of settling down from the day. But I want to wind this yarn for sure so that I'm ready to cast on. Hello, it's been a minute since I've given an update and I just kind of wanted to fill you in on how things are going. I am slowly making my way through the sock project. It's just not what I want to pick up in the evening, but I do really want to get going on this. I may be like a third of the way through. I'm currently reading through the patterns and just kind of looking at any tips and tricks that Summer includes in her patterns besides the actual pattern. I'm not like meticulously going through the patterns itself, but I've just finished the section on like basic socks. She got like 5 basic socks and I'm about to move into finishing and caring for your socks. So this should be more like information that I could maybe use, and then we'll get into more sock patterns. So I need to work on this a little bit more. I really want to finish by the end of this month. We're about midway through May, so I gotta make this happen. Though I did just finish my first sock, yay! It's not blocked or anything. It's a little bit scrunchy because of like the slip stitches and stuff, ta-da! But I've tried it on, it feels really good. I love these colors together. I thought about maybe doing this dark purple for the toe, but I felt like I liked how it looked with just on the cuff. So I'll have lots of that contrast color left over when I'm done with this pair. I really should cast on my next sock, but I am running out of knitting needles and I literally just had a needle break. Not in a way I ever expected. It's a metal needle and it broke right near the connection point to the cord. I use a lot of interchangeable needles, and so it broke right where that hole is that you put the T-pin in to help you tighten it. It broke along that, which was crazy. So I had to use pliers to like unscrew it from the cord so I could still use this cord. So now my needles don't match. They're a different length and it's working out okay. But I am running out of knitting needles. I'm running out of cords that are not like super kinky and breaking. So I definitely need to do like a little bit of overhaul and purchase some more supplies for knitting, considering how many socks I've got on the needles. And I do have a pattern test that I am trying to get through, and I need another set of needles just to pick up the provisional cast on and then like finish the cuff for that. So I think I might use this pair of needles to finish that cuff provisional cast on pickup. And then really soon I should be able to take the needles back out because I won't need them again, and then start my next sock. That's the plan. Hello, it's been a minute. Alfred's trying to go after the tripod. I finally feel like I have caught up with things that I was in the middle of, with work, with video edits, all that stuff, and I have like an hour and a half where I have exactly 0 plans. So I am going to read some more of The Sock Project. And I had to pull in my socks because it's been a minute since I've worked on them. I had a test knit going on, and I've been working a lot on a muscle burra that is just straight stockinette. That's been really nice. But I am a few repeats into the leg of my second sock. But I can't necessarily read and knit at the same time when I have a pattern. So I'm just gonna sit down and read some more and see what I can glean from Summer Lee's pattern book on some helpful tips and tricks for my knitting. So fun! I've never thought about doing speckled stripy socks. And I love this tip that she gives. Okay, first she says she didn't know that pickles were actually cucumbers that have been pickled. She thought there was a pickle plant, which is hilarious. But there's a couple tips and tricks in here on like catching your floats to like knit your ends as you go, which is something that I've done before. And there's also a tip for avoiding jogs, which I've not done, which is really actually a great tip. I know people have like slipped the first stitch of the round, but this is a different tip. So I'm gonna have to do this next time I do stripes, and maybe I should do some scrappy speckled stripes. Something I'm really liking that Summer has done in these patterns is that you can do these patterns totally individually. You don't have to pull information from a prior pattern in order to work on the pattern you want. So there's like multiple different striping patterns and multiple fading type patterns, but in each one it says the Craft Yarn Council's recommendations for like foot length, so that if you're gift knitting a sock for somebody, you don't have to track down those numbers. They are within the pattern, both with like the length of the leg that's recommended as well as the length of the foot. So that's really cool that that's included. So you don't have to go to like the basic pattern at the beginning of the book. You can just pick the pattern you want to start working on, and it has all those extra details in there that you would want. I don't know why it's taken so long for me to read this, because it's really quick reading a pattern, especially if I'm not actually making the pattern and going row by row, but just kind of glancing through and seeing if there are any other tips and tricks included. It's going by fast. I am already on chapter 8. For thick socks, I am definitely going to go until I get to the sock I'm working on, the Surf Wax socks. Maybe I'll take a break then and start working on my actual socks. I've got an audiobook that I'm listening to that I've only got like 3 hours left, so maybe I will pivot when I get to my Surf Wax socks pattern. Maybe I'll just keep going because I'm getting there, and it would be really nice to finish this before the end of June. Yes, this has gone on way too long. I need to figure out a different way to do videos like this, because this isn't super sustainable for me to do really long-term videos and like working on reading a knitting related book for like months on end. I've made it to the Surf Wax socks, and I am having a grand old time, so I think I'm just gonna keep going. The one thing about this pattern book is that it's really great if you have limited knowledge of socks, or if you're just starting out in socks and you have enjoyed yourself so far, or you want to tackle socks and you haven't yet. Great for a beginner for sure. As far as like for someone who's knit dozens of socks in my lifetime, there's a few tips and tricks in here that are worthwhile and some fun patterns, But from like a knowledge-based standpoint, this isn't giving me a lot of extra tips and tricks beyond what I've already learned in my practice of knitting socks, which is okay. It's not like I was looking for all the handy dandy tools and tricks, but that's something to be aware of, that you might not find use in this if you don't really like the patterns and if you're an experienced sock knitter. But if you don't have experience in knitting socks, you'll find lots of really great tips and tricks in here. But in my 3 years, I've knit socks for about 3 years now, knit dozens of socks. I feel like I'm picking up on a few things that are new to me or ideas that I want to try out, but not a lot. So it's a good thing that I love Summer Lee's patterns and that I'm interested in making some more patterns from this book, or else it wouldn't have been worth it to me. But I still definitely feel like this is worth the purchase if you want to make any of these sock patterns. Okay, this is cool. For the Soma socks, there's like a mock cable, and within the pattern, Summer highlighted those stitches that make that mock cable in purple. So there's a purple text instead of the normal black text. So you can know which stitches are involved with that design, which I think is really cool, especially if you're learning how to read your knitting. If you feel like I don't look very comfy, I'm kind of comfy, but my cat is like right here, so I can't really roll back into a more comfortable position. I'm kind of stuck like this. All right, I am on the very last section. I breezed through all those patterns, picking up a couple tips and tricks here and just getting a sense for Summer Lee's pattern design. I feel like she's really thorough, but not excessively so, which makes it great for a beginner or someone who's still learning a lot about knitting socks. Most of the patterns in here that can include charts do include charts, though I think a couple of them just have written instructions. And there's definitely a mix of patterns that are written for all sizes versus just for a few sizes. So like, especially the color work patterns, it kind of depends on how she sized things up and down and if they were even sizable. But I'm gonna put a pin in it right now because I want to work on the sock pattern before I finish reading this book. I am going to start working on the sock again because it's been a minute since I've put in some good time with doing that sock pattern. The heel is done, gusset is done, and we are almost to the toe. Well, okay, I've got a ways to go, but we are well on our way to the toe. I was not able to finish the sock June 30th, so it is actually July 1st. I'm really hoping to just knock this out, finish it, finish reading the book, and then probably not today because I'm kind of running out of time this afternoon, but maybe in a couple days I can do the like conclusion of working on this pattern, reading the book by Summer Lee, and finish off this video. I have put in a little bit of time this afternoon just doing a few more repeats of this pattern on the foot. And actually yesterday in church, it was just, I was running out of charge on my phone and it was just a little bit chaotic holding my phone and having my yarn and trying to manage all of that. And so I challenged myself to just read my knitting to do the pattern, and it worked great. So I shouldn't have been relying on the pattern for so long, really, until like I was on the heel. And then afterwards I switched over to doing it from my brain and reading my knitting, and it's worked out totally fine. So I just finished the foot. I'm about to do the toe. I have to remember what I did. I'm assuming I did the same toe pattern I normally do as far as the rate of decreases, but I'm gonna double check. So I'm gonna keep listening to my audiobook and I'm going to finish this sock and then weave in my ends and I'll be done. Hallelujah. And then we'll switch over to the sock project and finish the reading too. So let's finish up this read along, make along. This project took me longer than it should have. That's my own fault. I think that it's not very fun to read a project book cover to cover like it may be to read a different type of book. So I think for my Discord book club, I'm gonna do a different type of book next time to see if it'll catch my interest and be a quicker read next time, just to kind of truncate the project. It doesn't take months to do. I also really like this sock pattern, but it took me a while to really memorize. And so it took me longer to knit this pattern than it probably should have. Once I actually memorized the pattern, it was not hard to follow. It was really easy to read my knitting, but it was a me thing. I had a hard time memorizing the pattern. Let's go into a little bit more detail on both the book and the project. So as we're talking about The Sock Project by Summer Lee, I think this is a really good book, especially if you are a beginner sock knitter, or if you're fairly new to knitting socks. I think you can learn a lot of tips from this if you've only knit a couple pairs of socks and you want to delve more into it. I also think that this book is a really good fit for someone who likes knitting a lot of socks and wants some new patterns. There's like 25 patterns in this book, so there's lots to choose from. If you feel like you want to make a bunch of patterns from this book, I think that no matter how experienced of a sock knitter you are, you would still find value in this book as just a pattern book, regardless of the other tips and tricks and instructions that are also included in this. I also think if you really like Summer Lee, if you follow her on Instagram, think she's hilarious, then you would enjoy the tone of this book. There's a lot of points in this book where I laughed or giggled to myself because Summer has just a really funny sense of humor. And you'll see I made some little tabs on the edge of my book. I would say a majority of those tabs are related to funny things she said and not necessarily tips and tricks from me. So in my experience knitting dozens of pairs of socks, this only gave me a couple tips, and I'm not exaggerating, only like 2 or 3 tips that I think I want to use in future sock patterns. A lot of the tips she shares are things I've already encountered in my vast experience of knitting socks, and now I'm no expert, but I've knit lots of socks, and I've knit lots of socks from lots of different pattern designers, and so I have encountered a lot of these tips already before Summer Lee. I still learned a couple things, but mostly I just enjoyed her tone. I enjoyed the variety of sock patterns, from basic things through some textured socks and some cables and some color work. I definitely think I'll make at least a couple more pairs from here if I get a chance. I do have a lot of patterns in my to make list, but I think I could definitely see myself making more of these socks. And I do really like Summer Lee's patterns in general. I've made a few of her patterns in my life already. This is definitely going to stay in my fiber related bookshelf, and I hope to come back to some of these patterns at a later date. All that to say, I definitely recommend. It's hard to rate it on a number scale because it's mostly a reference book, but as far as a sock reference book goes, it's funny. It also has a lot of variety for the basic beginner, like brand new to knitting socks, as well as someone who has a little bit more experience, as well as even for someone who would consider themselves an expert or more advanced, more sock patterns that you might enjoy when you don't want something super intricate, but you want something a little bit more interesting to work on. So I definitely recommend this book, and I think that it has a place in any sock knitter's library, or anyone who wants to be a sock knitter. As far as the pattern goes, these Surf Wax socks, I really like them. I love this color palette. I feel like following my gut to pick this sock set was really the right call. I really love how these colors contrast with one another. I feel like the coloring of the sock set fits the pattern itself. It has a really great contrast, and I really love it. This pattern, like I said, wasn't hard to memorize once I took the time to do it, but I just didn't have the mental space to try and make myself memorize the 8-round stitch pattern when I really should have, because it wasn't hard once I actually memorized it to just do it. And it was really, really easy for the second half of the second sock to not even look, because I made myself not look and I made myself read my knitting. It's really easy to read your knitting between the slip stitches and the purl stitches. And if you try, I think you could easily get comfortable with the stitch pattern and memorize the repeat really easily if you want to do that. I did not do that for longer than I should have. I should have stretched myself mentally, but I did not. But I really enjoyed it. I did knit my socks kind of spread out, and so I don't know if I'm just really stressed right now. This sock is definitely a little bit smaller than the other one, but what can you do? I kept trying to remind myself to knit looser and I couldn't do it. So I was knitting a little bit tight. Next time I start a new sock pattern, maybe I should knit 2 at a time, but we'll see. Even though my socks are a little bit different in size, I still really like them and I'm excited to wear them. It is July now, it is hot. I do not see myself wearing these soon. But as soon as the weather cools down, I think these will definitely be in my rotation. I love the simple texture. I love working them up. They were fun and they were intuitive to work on, and I really enjoyed this sock pattern. Anyway, thanks for joining me as I took you along this journey of reading the sock project as well as working on a pattern from that book and sharing my experience through it all. And thank you for those of you who have joined my Discord book club as we talk about other fiber related books. For this next book club, we're going to read a novel together. It should be a much faster experience. We should have a lot more things to talk about in a book club sense. Since this book definitely wasn't as conducive to a book club discussion, I'm hoping that our next novel will be more so. I'll make sure to link the Discord down below in case you're interested in joining, and until next time, happy reading and happy making. Bye!